All right. Hi, I'm Kennedy. Welcome to the Fred Olen Play podcast, where we watch Fred Olen Ray movies and rate them on quality. We explore such questions as: Are they trying? Does this movie make any sense? And is this movie entertaining? This is our very first episode, and we're going to be discussing the 1988 classic film Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers. And this is my broadcast partner,
Meredith Halsey. And we're going to get into Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers, but first we owe you a bit of context. Who are we? Why are we doing this? And why now? So, Michael, who are you?
I'm Michael Kennedy, also known as ML Kennedy. I am a writer, and I have been obsessed with Fred Olen Ray for a while, even though I haven't watched a ton of his movies. But when I think of B movies, I think of Fred Olen Ray. I feel like you can use him as kind of a bellwether to see what lower ring, no budget to low budget to medium budget filmmakers are making money on and what's successful. And I hope that's what we learn from this podcast, that we kind of like a cultural snapshot of whether people are paying to see boobs and chainsaws or whether people are paying to see like weird Middle Eastern action movies, or whether people are paying to see Hallmark-style Christmas movies where, a busy businesswoman falls in love with a guy wearing a flannel shirt. Who are you, Meredith Halsey?
I have been watching B movies for, I don't know, I guess since I showed up at college and met you and your B movie nights in the college dorm. And that now that we're in year 3 of the pandemic, I found myself watching a lot more movies and realizing that Netflix and the other streaming services are just recommending blockbusters to me. And I realized, well, variety is the spice of life. And so I turned to you for some recommendations, and you were like, hey, how about Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers? And now here we are.
Well, so the problem is you can't go to Netflix for this stuff either.
Right.
All of the good, trash movies are either going to be on Amazon Prime or on Tubi. Tubi seems to have everything. Tubi is great because it's free. It's also secretly bad because it's, I believe it is run by the bad Fox people, like the old Fox News people. Anyways, what did you know about Fred Olen Ray before this podcast?
I had never heard of him. I had never heard
the name. That is so sad. Okay, what about someone like a Jim Wynorski? You ever hear that one before?
I have never heard that name before either.
Well, they're very similar filmmakers. Jim Wynorski, you might have seen his movie Chopping Mall, where the killer mall robots.
Yes, you showed that to me.
Oh, okay. So yeah, Fred Olen Ray is almost the same. Well, you want to jump into Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers?
Yeah. Based on your recommendation, I downloaded Tubi and watched Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers yesterday. I'm going to give a plot recap, and then I guess we can dive into explore the quality of this movie.
Yeah.
All right. One thing that I found really notable is at the top of the film, there is a disclaimer, and I'm going to read this verbatim. The chainsaws used in this motion picture are real and dangerous. They are handled here by seasoned professionals. The makers of this motion picture advise strongly against anyone attempting to perform these stunts at home, especially if you are naked and about to engage in strenuous sex. My conscience is clear. Fred Olen Ray.
That is a perfect way to start this movie. And by professionals, he means, 30-year-old actors known for playing bimbos.
I was dubious. I read this and I was like, okay, this is going for shock value. He wants viewers. It made a lot of sense to me because chainsaws are in all caps. Dangerous is in all caps. Professionals in all caps. And knowing the title of the movie, I was like, sure, it's going to make some sounds. But turns out it's very clear in the movie that the chainsaws are real and live and being used.
Yep.
Scary. Okay, but let's do the plot. So broadly speaking, this movie is about a group of sex workers in Hollywood who solicit customers and then murder them with chainsaws. Pretty straightforward and clear. We follow the gas-fueled adventures of 2 women in particular. Their names are Mercedes and Lisa, and they have very different styles of murder by chainsaw, but both are equally effective and bloody and fun. After we see a couple of murders, a private investigator gets drawn into the story when someone hires him to find their runaway daughter, whose name is Samantha Kelso. The private eye uses his connections at LAPD to steal clues. He follows the trail to Mercedes, and Mercedes promptly roofies and kidnaps him. So when he comes to, we learn that Mercedes, Lisa, and Samantha, who is now found, they're actually part of a local cult led by an Egyptian man who is portrayed as like maybe an Orson Welles type.
Okay, there's so much to say here. Oh God, where do I even start? Okay, so first off, the whole thing is done with a kind of tongue-in-cheek, hard-boiled detective narration that is kind of evocative of The Naked Gun. It takes itself that seriously, and
Yes,
he's shown to be an unreliable narrator all the time, talking about things that are the opposite of what's actually happening on the screen. The whole like big wink here too is that the private eye is named Jack Chandler, after Raymond Chandler. It's a big like, oh, get it.
And Raymond Chandler was a character in Naked Gun?
No. Raymond Chandler is the hard-boiled detective novelist. He wrote The Long Goodbye, The Big Sleep. If it wasn't written by Dashiell Hammett, it was written by Raymond Chandler. So like if you think of like a Humphrey Bogart movie, it's like a Raymond Chandler. He's the hard-boiled detective. Okay. The other thing is, just to break into the first Mercedes killing here, which is my favorite. So she takes the John back to her apartment, which has a whole shrine to Elvis. And she talks about Elvis, and then she plays a song and does a dance that is not to the tune of this song at all, before slicing the guy up with a chainsaw and getting like blood splattered all over her face. So 2 things here. They had originally recorded that with an Elvis song, but the budget of this movie is roughly $60,000. And if you were trying to use an Elvis song in a movie, I believe it would cost you about $35,000. So what they did, because Fred Olen Ray is punk rock, they hired an Elvis impersonator to sing an original song and just replaced the Elvis song with that, which is why the dancing doesn't match at all.
Who's the Elvis impersonator?
The Elvis, I don't remember his name. It is listed on IMDb.
Okay.
The other important thing to know from that scene is that's really our introduction to Mercedes. Yeah. Now, Mercedes is played by Michelle Bauer, who is credited in this movie as Michelle McLennan. Michelle Bauer is one of this trio of scream queens from the 80s. There is her, there is Linnea Quigley, and there is Brink Stevens. Brink Stevens passed on this movie because she said, I cannot be in a movie called Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers. My parents would disown me. She's made plenty of worse stuff, but,
There's a line, and she wasn't going to cross it. I respect that.
Yeah, the line was the title of the movie. Michelle Bauer, she was in like Evil Tunes. She was in Sorority Babes in the Slimeball Bolorama, which stars actually all 3. It stars Linnea Quigley, Michelle Bauer, and Brink Stevens. And Nightmare Sisters as well. They all 3 of them were in those, and those were both directed by David Dakota, who is essentially the gay version of Fred Olen Ray, in that he made these same movies as Fred Olen Ray did in the 80s, but now in like the past 20 years, he makes movies with a bunch of shirtless dudes that all kind of like hang around a house together and like have homoerotic adventures. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, he also makes a bunch of Lifetime movies with Vivica Fox. But anyway, back to like weird backstories of these things. So Linnea Quigley is in this movie though, because she is Samantha. Now, if you recognize Linnea Quigley at all, you'll recognize her for 2 things. One, she is in Silent Night, Deadly Night, Part 1 and Part 2. But most people, I think, my age, remember Linnea Quigley from Return of the Living Dead, where she does a striptease dance in a graveyard and plays a character named Trash. It's Return of the Living Dead is kind of a perfect movie. All right, so I've caught up with that. Let's see. Oh yeah, Michelle Bauer is Michelle McLennan in this movie. It doesn't have her real name in the credits because at that point she was divorced from her first husband and using her second husband's name. And then everybody's like, no, but you're Michelle Bauer. Go back to your original name. And she made a deal with her first husband that she could continue using her name even though he didn't want her to. The other big thing, the guy who is the master in charge of all this, because Anubis is now the god of chainsaws instead of the god of mummies. He is played by Gunnar Hansen. Do you know who Gunnar Hansen is?
I looked that up on Wikipedia. He's the chainsaw murderer from Friday the 13th.
You are really close. He is the original Leatherface from Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah, exactly the same movie. Yes, totally.
Exactly the same thing. Well, the main difference is that Texas Chainsaw Massacre is actually a good movie, and Friday the 13th is trash.
They are
but
equal in quality.
Oh, that is so rude.
Is that fighting words? I didn't.
Those are fighting words. Yeah. No, Gunnar Hansen is like this big guy. He was born in Reykjavik, in Iceland, and he is not really an actor. He's a writer and a poet, and like I think he studied. God, I want to say he studied English and like Finnish culture or something like that at the University of Austin. I can't remember exactly, but yeah, he was like the head editor of the poetry magazine, and he's just like this big kind of gentle giant guy. But since he was an Austin guy, like he and Toby Hooper knew each other, and that's how he ended up as Leatherface. And this is actually the first time he had done any acting since about 1977.
And it shows.
He's super stiff, but he's a lovable guy. He died a few years back prematurely, but that happens to all of us.
Prematurely? What's
we all die prematurely.
We all die,
except for Angela Lansbury. She got her exactly full run.
How about Betty White?
Betty White should have made it to 100, but I mean, she's no Olivia de Havilland.
Got it.
Right now, the one to watch is Glynis Johns. She's the oldest actor that I recognize that's still alive, and she's 99.
Okay, she might make it. So
she might
your
make
ideal
it.
age then 100, a nice round number?
Yeah, like George Burns. He pretended to be 100 years old, and then he died. So.
Well, okay, so we talked about, you said his name was Hansen?
Gunnar Hansen,
Gunnar Hansen. Okay, so he's playing this cult leader and delivering lines as if he is trying to do an imitation of Orson Welles and failing because, as you've just outlined, he's not an actor. He's a poet, which makes sense. Okay, so he's doing
Leatherface didn't get a lot of lines.
Right. He's doing his best. That is clear. I did see his character was introduced basically by a close-up on his face, and he is looking knowingly at Mercedes picking up a victim, and he was pretty good at that. So I would say a lot of respect should go to him because he's clearly trying. He is apparently doing his best. So good.
Yeah, he's got a good presence.
Yeah. Right. You mentioned that they are worshiping Anubis, right? So they're in a cult. He's the cult leader. So this Orson Welles type guy is from Iceland, is playing an Egyptian man who is a cult leader, and he has recruited or what's it called when you get cultists? Is it called recruiting?
Yeah, I think you can recruit. I mean, that's what NXIVM was doing, right?
So he's recruited a bunch of prostitutes in the Hollywood area as members of his cult, where they are worshiping Anubis, or maybe Horus, because they did interchange that a little bit, by murdering men with chainsaws.
Yeah.
Got it.
Like the Egyptian gods want, yeah.
Right. All right. So the private eye, he has discovered Mercedes, and he realizes that, hey, Samantha's right there. She was in the same bar dancing topless. He gets roofied, and now he's kidnapped and tied to a bed. So Mercedes and Lisa and Samantha and the cult leader, they show up, and they basically tell us what's going on. That, it's a cult. They worship. And now our private eye is the next human sacrifice. So Michael, like a couple of days ago, Netflix did release a program called Attack of the Hollywood Clichés, which I watched in preparation for this, because I was like, oh, well, it's a B movie. There's probably going to be some cliches, and that might be a way to evaluate the quality of this film. One of the cliches that they outlined is called tech failure. It's like a conveniently failing tech that helps the plot move forward. And usually in like a horror movie, it would be your cell phone has died or there's no signal. Like, oh no, right?
Yeah. Why did that happen? So the movie could happen. Yeah.
Exactly. So in this case, in this movie, the chainsaw is tech, and it fails because they run out of gas just as they're going to dig into the private eye. So Mercedes and Lisa they have to go get more gas. The cult leader has left, so he's out of the picture. So now Samantha is left alone with the private eye, and he's like, Samantha, your mom hired me to find you. I'm going to take you home. And so Samantha is like, yeah, great. No, I don't want to, because I have infiltrated this cult and I'm staying with them because they killed my best friend from childhood in my hometown, and I came all this way and you are ruining my plans.
Yeah, she's got big undercover plans. This teenager who is also 21, played by 30-year-old Linnea Quigley.
That is exactly what I was going to ask, because like the plot sometimes treats her like an adult woman and sometimes like a child, and it's very confusing.
Yeah, she's referred to as Kid a lot. I guess we're supposed to assume she ran away as a teenager and it's been a couple of years, or maybe they just threw in the 21 line just to make our hero seem like less of a creep for dating a younger woman. But again, she's played by a 30-year-old, so who knows? I think just the general sexism of our main character, Jack Chandler, is probably the main reason he's infantilizing her most of the time anyway. So
it does seem that Jack was created by somebody who thought that they were doing a good job writing a comedic homage to film noir.
Yeah, I don't know. It's pretty film noir-y. Like I've watched a lot of these, and it's "You could have knocked me over with the pubic hair" is probably one of my favorite lines of this movie.
I think that line is indicative of they were trying.
They're definitely trying. Like that's not something like a sane person doesn't come up with that line, right?
Right. Okay. So Samantha, who is now revealed to be undercover and she's going to bring the cult down from the inside, she unties Jack Chandler and he immediately headbutts her because his plan is more important. He kind of kidnaps her because he wants to return her to her mother. That's what he's getting paid to do.
That was also a real headbutt too.
Oh, jeez.
On the take they used, the actors screwed up, and they're like, "Well, it's our last shot of the day. I guess it's okay."
Did he give her a concussion? That looks rough.
I don't think he actually gave her a concussion or hurt her seriously, but yeah, no, there is definitely a connection happening there. And they were just like, "Oh, okay, well, that's it. We're done for the day." So, and being done for the day is a big deal in this movie because it was shot in 5.5 days.
Oh my God. All right, so she was like really committed to the role to come back after getting headbutted.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So she's knocked out. He like drives her back to his office. And when she comes to, she goes about seducing him because somehow, like at first I thought that she was trying to seduce him to get away from him and go back to the cult and carry out her plan. But it also seems that they're actually falling in love as well. And that was, I don't think the romance was handled appropriately. I think that was another cliche where they were like, we have a male and a female character, and our male character is our stand-in for the target audience, which is obviously like a straight teenage boy.
Yeah.
So we're just going to have Samantha just fall for him.
Yeah, she's pretending, but it's still going to happen anyway because that's how movies in the 80s and 90s worked. Yeah.
Totally. Okay. So now that they have slept together and he is like more amenable to what she wants to do, they're like, okay, let's go break into the cult temple and interrupt their human sacrifice ceremony that they know is going to happen. And that's when the movie gets very interesting. It went from B movie that you could tell they were trying to go for like Naked Gun or Airplane type tone and not quite hitting it, in my opinion, all the way to trying to hit you over the top of the head with like, we're just like Airplane, because they show up, they're like, are we close to the temple? And then there's signs written on cardboard or plywood saying, temple this way, and big statues of Egyptian-style cats. Not even Anubis.
Yeah, just cats, yep.
Just cats, and then they like walk through some hallways and they're like, temple this way, more signs. Oh, and they're promptly caught. Like Mercedes and Lisa are like, you showed up, great, we caught you, and now you're going to be our human sacrifice. Woo, yay. And I thought that this was the moment where I realized that the actresses playing Mercedes and Lisa were actively trying. And I couldn't tell if they had just been given the best lines of the movie or if they were the best actors in the movie.
Honestly, I don't know much about the actor playing Lisa, but yeah, Michelle Bauer, she started as a penthouse playmate or whatever they call those, penthouse pets. And she's worked with Fred Olen Ray a lot. And she's kind of like, she knows what she's getting into with these situations. And sometimes I find her like a little stilted, but I mean, it's an 80s schlock movie. It should be. But yeah, she does some like amazing facial expressions in these temple scenes where it's just cuts to her watching and nothing happens, but you still feel like, oh, that's a worthwhile shot. Now, the temple is like actually shows some production value. and that's because it is left over from another movie. The temple set that's used in these is actually from House 2, the second story. I've never actually seen the House series. Do you know? It's the American House one, not the Japanese Houseu ones. Do you ever seen any of those or no?
Haven't seen them.
Yeah, so the only thing I know about them is they're ostensibly horror comedies, and I believe the first one stars Norm from Cheers, and the second one stars Cliff from Cheers. And some of the other stuff in here is actually left over from the 1986 movie Vamp, which was a Grace Jones movie.
Oh, so they're being very green, reusing things. It's all about reduce, reuse, then recycle.
Yeah, and this is how you make a movie for $60,000.
Yeah. That makes all the sense in the world. And it looked really good, right? Insofar as it was a temple that was supposed to be in a warehouse dedicated to a variety of Egyptian, deities. I am no, Egyptologist.
You used to be a roommate with an Egyptologist, though.
Right,
so.
yeah. Anubis is not the same as Horus, and neither one of them were worshipped by drinking motor oil, which is how the ceremony begins.
I don't think either of them had any strong opinions about chainsaws either, but this is the kind of movie that we're getting into. So speaking of cost-saving techniques, there is a scene early on, I think, where Michelle Bauer kills her second John, where she goes up to an apartment and murders him. And that scene is just shot in Fred Olen Ray's apartment.
Oh, okay.
And then, she puts him in the bathtub afterwards, and the story is told that they were actually just working on the script in the next room while they were shooting the bathroom stuff. And in that apartment building at that time, now this is according to IMDb, so, take it with a grain of salt, but other people living in that same building were Jeffrey Combs, who you'll know as Herbert West from Reanimator, and Edie McClurg. She is a character actor you've seen in 100 things, but I always think of her first as saying, "Oh, he's one righteous dude" in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Yeah, that old lady. I think she might be like Mrs. Puffs or somebody on SpongeBob. I can't remember. But
nice. Okay, so we're in the temple, and the ceremony has begun. There's a lot of fanfare about drinking from a collective pan of motor oil. Everybody takes a sip. And then there's this MC, I think it's the cult leader. He MCs and he's like, "And now it is time for the virgin dance of the double chainsaws." Yeah,
so this is a scene that is basically added to pad out the runtime to 75 minutes because they were out of money. And it was shown on TV to hype the movie and trailers and stuff like that, despite the fact that Linnea Quigley is just naked. She is wearing body paint and nothing else.
She's wearing a sequin thong.
She is wearing the sequin thong, which doesn't really look like Egyptian or the rest of the outfit or anything. But
it looks very uncomfortable. That's what it looks
This is the scene in particular where you can see that Linnea Quigley is pretty lightheaded by the end of it.
Right, yeah. So one of the things that I was shocked by, so low budget film, so you're going to have actors who are not going to command high salaries. They're doing it for fun or for the love of the craft or whatever, right? Yeah. And every single actress who takes their clothes off in this movie, and there's 4, 5, 6 of them, they're all ripped, right? They're not just thin. They're not just fit. They've got they lift weights, and you can tell they're not professional weightlifters, but in this virgin dance of the double chainsaws, Samantha's muscle tone in her shoulders are her muscles are flexing. You could tell because of that these are real chainsaws, and they're probably full of gas, because otherwise why is she having so much trouble with a dance? Because she's got 2 huge weights in her hands. And I was like, oh my god, who are they? Are these athletes? Who are these people? Do you know?
Yeah, well, they are just scream queens. This is their job. And this is the 80s. Aerobics was huge then.
It's more than aerobics. They are fit. I was like, maybe they're gymnasts. I don't know.
Yeah, near as I can tell, Linnea Quigley is just somebody who was born in Iowa and went out to Hollywood to make a bunch of trashy movies, and she is a hero for that.
Well, yeah. I mean, getting out of Iowa.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So Samantha finishes the virgin dance of the double chainsaws. It's great. Everybody's watching. Everybody's got crazy over-the-top makeup in addition to Samantha's body paint. They're really going for a Susie and the Banshees kind of vibe, which makes sense because this is 88. And after she's done with the dance, our cult leader, he orders Samantha to kill the private eye. And so, surprise, she's not going to kill the private eye. She takes the chainsaw and kills the cult leader instead. So we get a nice, like, bloody scene. We get the least exciting death of the movie. I won't say it's not an exciting death. It's just the least of the movie. And then Mercedes, Michelle Bauer, she picks up a chainsaw. And then there's a chainsaw duel where it's extremely clear that the chainsaws are live and that these two women are very carefully wielding the chainsaws as if they were in a lightsaber fight.
Yeah, it is. If it were done with any other weapon, like it would be the least the most underwhelming fight of all, because they are very careful here. But the fact that they've got these live chainsaws in their hands, it's insane. I don't know if you would get away with that at all today. See, this is the beauty of kind of the Wild West of 80s direct-to-video schlock. You don't know what you're gonna get.
They didn't even take off the tines. I'm not sure what you call it, the cutting bit. You can take that off and still have the motor.
You can take the chains off. Yeah,
the chains. The chains were on. The chains were on these chainsaws.
Yeah, and back in the 80s, everybody's watching this on VHS, so you wouldn't even been able to tell, except in maybe a close-up, that the chains were off. But like, no, that's too much work.
So there's two women acting naked, well, near naked, right? So one's in body paint, and the other one's in a silky robe. Hats off to them. Okay, so they do the fight. Samantha wins because, the good guy always wins. That's the only other cliche in the movie. Samantha kills Mercedes and everybody else flees, and there's a running away scene that's kind of funny. And then Samantha falls romantically into the private eye's arms. Like, she unties him from the altar and falls into his arms romantically. And then I was just like, well, she's doing a really good job of selling, having fallen in love with him for no discernible reason, because he didn't do anything but headbutt her. And then he's got a few lines that are more like teenage male fantasy of I'm the guy, this is all about me. That's what this movie is. That's totally fine. And then there's this weird closing incident where the bodies of the cult leader and Mercedes disappear into vapor. So there's a little bit of oh no, was the cult real?
It's the end, or is it?
Right. So what did you think of that? Did they dissolve into gasoline vapor?
Well, I mean, clearly Anubis is the one true god of chainsaws, and Anubis has saved them, and they will show up in that sequel that was promised in the ending title card. Chainsaw Student Nurses or something along those lines.
Yeah, it said coming soon, Student Chainsaw Nurses, bad to the bone.
But yeah, no, they never ended up making the Student Nurse bad to the bone chainsaw movie because no one would give Fred Olen Ray the money up front like he wanted.
Okay, so for the overall quality of Hollywood chainsaw hookers, where would you rate this in your personal evaluation criteria?
Okay, hold on. Let me go over these questions again. We got quality. We want effort, quality, sense, and entertainment, right? Is that what we're doing?
Sure.
I'm going to give it a solid 6 or 7 out of 10 for quality in terms of production values and stuff like that, because there's a lot of stuff going on and a lot of it looks pretty good, Yeah. You can tell that they cut corners, definitely. There's a lot of, recycled sets and props and that sort of thing. But yeah, let's say 6.5 out of 10.
6.5 out of 10. Okay. I can definitely respect the scrappiness and reusing of materials to have a good outcome. What about effort?
Oh, gosh. I think this is a 9 out of 10 effort because, honestly, you have no money and under a week, and it still looks like an actual movie. Mm-hmm. They did so much with so little. The budget of the movie was such that it was entirely filmed on short ends, is what I've heard, too.
What's a short end?
Short ends are what's left over when you shoot a roll of film and you didn't use it all. There's leftover pieces.
Oh.
They've been exposed to the elements, and they're not quite as good as a fresh can of film. So they sell those off cheaper. So basically, they pinched every penny out of this. Roger Corman would have been proud.
Amazing. It didn't look bad. I mean, you could tell it was made in the 80s and not lovingly digitally restored. But other than that, it looked totally decent.
Yeah, and like with Fred Olen Ray, he's enough of a craftsman that like you get some of these B movies and the shots are not in focus or the sound is terrible, and like he's a journeyman. He knows what he's doing.
Well, what he was doing was getting the breasts like in full view in every shot, and you could tell that was intentional. So
yeah, you got to have that level of clarity
yeah,
to see the detail on the areolas. Yeah.
All right. How about entertainment value?
This movie, I would say probably 8.5 out of 10. Like there is so much happening in this movie. And even though it does feel padded at times, which is insane for a 75-minute movie, I find this movie fascinatingly entertaining. I'm going to say 8.5 out of 10 there.
Okay. I agree. It is entertaining. There were some plot holes, but essentially I was bought in as soon as Mercedes had her first chainsaw murder, and it was clear that folks behind the camera were just throwing things at her, body parts, buckets of blood, and that was really funny. That was amazing. Okay.
Yeah, I think they were machine-assisted throwing things at her at one point as well. Like, they like had like a leaf blower hooked up to like a blood fountain or something stupid like that. I
think it was the best scene of the movie.
Yeah.
It was good. Okay, and what else? What's another criteria here?
Does the movie make sense? So you said plot holes. I mean, this is clearly the tightest script since The Outlaw Josie Wales. I mean, everything makes perfect sense to me.
Okay, 10 out of 10 for sense?
No, I probably graded on the curve of an 80s B movie. It's probably still a 7 out of 10 for sense for me. Like, I know why scenes are happening.
Okay, so Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers, effort 9 out of 10, quality 6.5 out of 10, entertainment value 8.5 out of 10, and sense making 7 out of 10.
That all sounds fair to me, yeah.
Stand by it.
A couple other things before we go or do any wrap up. We did not mention the actor playing what is supposed to be our lead part here, but it was probably the least important character who doesn't do anything in the movie, and that is Jack Chandler himself. That dude is named Jay Richardson.
Okay.
He goes by John Henry Richardson now because he's older and it sounds more distinguished, I guess. I don't know. But he's one of these like workhorse B movie guys. He's got, I think, over 170 IMDb credits, and he's just constantly pumping out movies to this day. He's in stuff like Munchie, if you ever saw Munchie.
Nope.
Munchie is a weird family comedy with Lonnie Anderson and like a puppet.
Okay.
It was called that because Munchies was popular, which is like a Gremlins ripoff movie, but they decided to make a family version of it and call it Munchie. And then he's also in stuff like Alienator, which is another Fred Olen Ray movie, which I think we have to watch pretty soon.
Okay.
Oh, if you were impressed by the physiques of the women in this movie, wait until you see the main woman in Alienator. But anyway, Jay Richardson, he's got like a lot of small parts and big stuff and big parts and small stuff. It's like that curse of the B movie actor. Yeah. Also, two other actors worth noting. There is Dookie Flyswatter, who's kind of a cult musical figure who is in the band Haunted Garage.
Is that his real name?
No, Dookie Flyswatter is his stage name. So yeah, Dookie Flyswatter is the like evil-looking bartender.
Oh yeah. I noted that he was wearing a Happy St. Patrick's Day vest, but elsewhere in the movie they established it was in June.
Yeah.
Okay.
Again, the tightest plot since The Outlaw Josie Wales.
Like
everything makes sense. Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And then there's another smaller appearance. Jerry Miller from the band Moby Grape is in this movie as well. And Moby Grape is one of those bands that was supposed to be like huge, and then like everything kind of fell apart, and like everybody ended up suing each other.
Oh my gosh, I had no idea there were so many musicians in this film.
Yeah, I mean, you're in LA, so everybody's going to be a comedian or a musician
or a fire breather.
Or oh my god, we didn't talk about that. That might have been my favorite part in the movie. That was awesome. We have a full-on fire-eating performance for no reason to pad out the runtime, where she like holds the fire in her fingertips and she lights things with it, and then she breathes fire, and then she swallows fire. It's just full-on cinema verite at that point. Like, we are just watching a variety show at the climax of our movie. Oh my gosh, I didn't even write down any notes of that, but this is amazing. She is awesome.
Okay. Anything else?
I think I've said everything. This is definitely the sort of movie where if somebody in your family walks in on you, they'll be like, what are you watching? But no, it definitely recommends, especially with like-minded friends where you can, cheer and have fun.
Amazing. Okay, so I think this is going to be my benchmark for Fred Olen Ray movies, right? I'd never seen one before, and we didn't have any expectations going in. So I see and honor your ratings, and just know that this one is like currently the gold standard standard, and we'll see if that holds.
Yeah, and I picked this movie. You'll pick next time's movie, and since you don't know what you're getting into, that'll be amazing because we could end up with literally any kind of movie.
Well, why don't we pencil in Alienator, since you already mentioned that as a potential successor?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, cool. All right, so that was Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers.
Yes. I'm sticking with Fred Olen Just Push Play. Fred Olen Play right now. That's the only pun I can come up with now. If we come up with a better name, we'll do it.
Play. Well, we don't have to decide right away, right?
Okay. Well, and Fred Olen Ray had his own podcast, but it only ran for 9 episodes, and it hasn't been a thing since like 2019, so.
Got it. Until next time, I am Meredith Halsey, and...
I'm Kennedy.
And bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Going Over Our Freds was created and produced by us, Michael Kennedy and Meredith Halsey.
Our theme was composed and performed by Justin Nozick. Find more music for him at Bandcamp. Search for The Plague Physicians.
Artwork by Michael Kennedy. Special thanks to everyone who helped make the season possible, including the friends and family who let us watch these movies instead of this year's Academy Award nominees. And thank you for listening.
If you'd like to hear more from us, subscribe to Going Over Our Freds on your favorite podcast app. Follow us on Twitter at Goof Podcast, and find us on Instagram at Going Over Our Freds.
This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. For questions, comments, and complaints, email us at goingoverourfreds@gmail.com.
Thanks.